Hello, everyone. Welcome to Small Biz Tips. So about a couple months ago, I had a chance to connect with this guy, and I saw that he was traveling all around the world. I was like, wait a second, who is this? And he had a company that was super impressive that I had to bring him on the pod. Richard, what's going on, man?
Yeah, good to be here. Thank you for having me, and I hope you're having a good time down there in Orlando.
I'm having a blast, man. So to get started, right? Who is Richard?
Well, that's a curveball question, I guess. Who am I? I am, a 40-year-old entrepreneur that has lived across three different continents and straddled mostly technology, but I've, done everything from um, setting up a pizzeria, but
Huh.
like the real kind of, nice wood oven, nice
Yeah.
crust, the kind of healthier type of pizza, right? With really good toppings. But very legitimate. Like I've
Mm-hmm.
imported, a 3.5 ton pizza oven to kind of from Milano all the way to
Wow.
Asia when I did that. So that was in Malaysia. But I've done a lot of things. I guess I started out trying to be a professional tennis player. Spent actually a lot of time in Florida
Huh.
up in Bradenton at the Bollettieri Academy, but due to a let's say a weak left knee, it didn't really quite pan out the way
Oh
I
man.
wanted it to. But and then my dad was in the yachting business, and a lot of that was done in Fort Lauderdale. And
Mm-hmm.
we then brought a lot of the yachts and boats back to sort of North Europe and sold them there. We also manufactured in Sarasota. So I had this early kind of, I guess, exposure to entrepreneurship and
Yeah.
to being your own boss and running your own business. And so that kind of became a part of I guess my DNA, and that's why I've done a couple of things. I kind of slipped into technology in my early 20s, and that was obviously the thing at the time. We're
Mm.
kind of now in 2005, so the first dot-com crash had occurred,
Yeah.
and I thought it was fascinating. And it was like you didn't need to be anything really to get into the tech industry. You could be like this complete misfit where, you kind of didn't fit into the typical or the stereotypical corporate environment. You could kind of go and do your own thing, and nobody knew
Mm.
much about the industry at the time, so anybody was an expert per se. So technology, different things, been in technology in terms of media, digital media publishing, and
Mm-hmm.
then obviously now in sort of pet technology and a bunch of things in between. But I am an entrepreneur at heart. That's who I am. That's your
Mm.
question. And I just love building things. If I'm not doing something that's technological on a computer, I love to do something with my hands, whatever that is, fixing a car, raking the
Mm.
garden, just fixing around the house, right? I mean, it's very
Yeah,
much
you're a
therapy
builder.
to me to yeah, I'm a builder. I'm a creator. I just want to do stuff. I just can't sit still.
So I'm curious. You started in tech. You were also a media, right?
Yeah.
T Tell us more about that because it's hard for a lot of people to go from industry to industry, but you've done that and you've done it in different countries. So tell us a little bit more.
Yeah, so sure. So in my early 20s, I moved from, at the time I lived in Stockholm, Sweden, and I moved to
Mm-hmm.
Hong Kong in the Far East. And it was this very special time in Hong Kong where, 10 years prior or 8 years prior, the UK had given back Hong Kong to obviously mainland China, but with this sort of
Mm.
50-year, we're going to hand it over slowly over 50 years. But it was a magical time. A lot of entrepreneurs kind of congregated in Hong Kong, and it was really that shift from static classical
Mm.
magazines, glossy magazines and newspapers, to what does that translate to in a web format, and obviously very web one based, right? So
Yeah.
you're taking something static and you're putting it up online. And so I did that, but I did it together with a community. So this is kind of pre-Facebook,
Oh,
pre,
wow.
I guess, Friendster had been around, MySpace had been around, but we kind of built a community. We built the magazine part, which was very focused on luxury and lifestyle, so sort of more passion topics.
Yeah.
And then we had an event guide and a city guide. So it was a place where you could escape for 5 minutes, read up about your passions. You could congregate with your peers and talk about, interesting topics under the sort of luxury and lifestyle umbrella. And then you had this other way of reading up about where to stay, play, shop, and wine and dine, essentially, and what kind of events was happening across that city. So
That's
that started in
amazing.
Hong Kong, and then that expanded it to Singapore. I then moved with expansion, set it up in Singapore. Then I set up the Malaysia version, and then we had a Thai version. So it was kind of Hong Kong, Singapore,
I love it.
Bangkok, Kuala Lumpur, very metropolitan, city center, urban kind of magazine. And then we sold that to Hubert Burda Media in
Congrats.
2016. December, thank you. And I stayed on for 4 years and kind of worked on digital transformation for the group. I expanded our brand to India, set
Mm-hmm.
up the Daily Mumbai edition, and also across the pond to Europe, where we kind of said, look, we got all these rich Asians that are reading the magazine. Can we lift them over in a physical sense to Paris, where they can wine and dine, they can shop, they can
Mm.
stay at the best hotels, they can do all these different things. So we had that kind of in a bilingual sense. It was in Mandarin, which is Chinese or traditional Chinese, and then we had it in English, and primarily targeting the mainlanders or the mainland Chinese. Yeah.
Couple questions when it comes to that, the different cultural nuances, right? Because you said you built a community before community was even popular, right? So how did you go about doing that, in Hong Kong and different part of the world, and by also taking, paying attention to all of the little cultural differences?
So I guess, in Hong Kong in particular, you have a lot of what we call ABCs, American born Chinese, or
Mm,
CBCs, Canadian born Chinese. So you have maybe uh, their grandparents still live in Hong Kong, but their folks, their parents had moved into Hong Kong, to Canada somewhere, or to US somewhere for a better future.
gotcha,
And so they were brought up in a very Western way or in an international
gotcha.
way. And then they were back, and so for them, this international kind of group of people were really where they wanted to congregate. But look, I think that was in Hong Kong. In Thailand, it was a little bit different. We were bilingual, so
Yeah,
we were in Thai, we were in English, and certainly the international ties would maybe be more on the English one, and then the more sort of local ties would prefer the Thai version, and that's all fine. So I think, culture to me is being open-minded and
mm,
understanding that people are, in some cases, very different from yourself. They have different
yeah,
preferences. They like different things. They believe in different things. They believe in a different religion, different God,
yeah.
and that's all fine. So I think, if you want to be successful with something in a foreign country, you need to be very open-minded, and understand that your way is not necessarily the best way,
Mm.
or the normal way.
Let's go further, right? You said your way is not the best way. What were some of your lessons that you learned building that business from beginning to acquisition and post acquisition?
Well, I guess, to all of those entrepreneurs that may be listening, or people that are thinking of going into starting up a business, right?
Mm-hmm.
And being an entrepreneur or entrepreneurship is essentially the same as setting up a business, running a business, in many regards. I guess my one thing or takeaway was that things take always a hell lot longer than you think, right?
Mm,
You're gonna have to put in, you're gonna have to commit, you're gonna have to
yeah,
put in the hours and the days and the months and the years. It's just not gonna happen that fast, right? Um, and so I think, don't rush it.
yeah.
Let it take its course, and it's gonna take some time. Um, I guess also, there is a big degree of naivety going into something, especially at a young age, because you lack the experience. And so And so, and that's fine. You need to be quite naive
Yeah,
in order to succeed, because you're going to have to take a lot of no's before you get a yes eventually.
I love it.
And that's just how it is. But there needs to be a balance between what's being, naivety that's healthy and what's
Mm,
unhealthy. And so if you could have some, like, I guess one of the things that I regret with my early ventures was that I didn't have enough advisors, senior advisors, that could kind of pull me back a bit and hold me
mm-hmm,
back and sort of say, Richard, look, we're not saying this is right, but here's a different viewpoint, and
mm,
let that marinate and sink in, and process it, and do what you want with it. But here's at
yeah.
least a different viewpoint to how you view it. So I think, you know, today when I'm older and wiser, I have a large advisory board that is helping me with my current business, and they're all experts in different areas. They all view it with a very different lens,
Mm-hmm.
and it gives me perspective, and I think that's really important. So find people, I think, that can provide a different perspective is very helpful. So I guess that's two of the lessons. I mean, the other one is, try to learn the local language, because through language and through
Yeah.
cuisine, which is the local food, you can learn a lot. You can learn
Yes.
an awful amount about the locals in that area. Remember, you're a foreigner in their
Yeah.
country, so don't come and dictate that
Yeah.
things are going to be the way that you want it to be,
That's
because
true.
you're the guest. So I've been a guest. I'm a guest now. I'm in Spain now. I'm a
Mm-hmm.
guest here because I'm not from here. I've been a guest in Singapore. I've been a guest in Hong Kong. I've been a guest in Malaysia. I lived in these different countries. And look, you got to assimilate to where you're guesting and where you are, and usually it's not the other way around. So that's, I guess, the third tip, right?
I
Like,
love it. Thank you for
become a
sharing those
local.
tips. No, that's true because you got to think about it, right? When you become a local, you learn the language, you assimilate yourself in the culture. People are more open to you, and you're able to get better feedback in terms of customer base, right? So I'm curious.
Totally.
You mentioned something about your new company. Tell us more about that. What company do you have now? I mean, because to me it was mind blowing. So tell us about that company.
So now let's see if I can get my dog. Where is he? Caesar, where are you, Caesar? Come here. Come here, boy. I'm just gonna show the inspiration, and then that's gonna lead into what we're doing. So this is Caesar. This is a
Oh,
10-year-old Maltese.
oh my
So
God.
he's a little guy. So I'm gonna take off what he was wearing.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, buddy. So this is what we're doing. So this is a health and longevity monitor for
Mm.
canines or dogs. It goes around the neck. It was sitting around his
Mm-hmm.
neck. And what we have is a temperature gauge on the back, and then we have a bunch of onboard sensors inside of the monitor. And what we look
Mm-hmm.
at is health markers. So this is a Whoop strap, right? You can
Yeah.
have an Aura ring, you might have an Apple Watch, something of that nature. We're kind of mimicking that, and we're in a understandable way explaining how your pet is feeling, um, physically and emotionally, right? So
Yeah.
it's all about health markers. It's all about kind of understanding what could possibly be wrong with your dog at any
Yeah.
given moment, and we're giving you that data real time. As we spot out of range values, we kind of send you a push notification.
Oh,
We
wow.
tell you that this particular health marker is out of range, which medically means that it's either elevated or it's
Yeah.
it's below the normal range. And then if that particular value is then out of range for a longer period of time, you get a second one that will explain
Mm.
why it has been out of range for that period of time. But it will also give you CTA buttons, usually two different options that you can click on and get directed to a solution. That could be a televet, that could be your own vet, then all
Oh,
that data
wow.
can be shared with a dynamic link. So think of it as a uh, pet ecosystem in your phone, in your pocket, also kind of a veterinary in your
That's
pocket
amazing.
that's there to guide you along, become a better and more obedient pet owner and pet parent, but also ultimately with the goal of ensuring that your pet lives a happier, healthier, and a longer life. And that's kind of what we're doing. So inside of the app, we have a program, we call it longevity,
Mm-hmm.
and it's all about longevity. So there's three pillars. We got a pillar that we kind of look at activity and rest, right?
Mm,
Which are two critical parts of any species that want to live long, right? You need to
yeah,
exercise, but you also need to rest, right?
yeah.
The second pillar is health and nutrition. That's like,
Mm-hmm.
you know, self-explanatory, right? And the third one is preventative care and health screenings. And like if you conduct these daily tasks that we kind of feed you through push notifications in a timely manner, you are going to have a happier pet, a healthier
Yeah,
pet, and a pet that's hopefully going to live a longer and better life. Yeah.
that's amazing, man,
So
because I'm a pet
that's what
owner
we're
as
doing.
well.
Okay,
And
cool. What do you have?
and I have a mini poodle, and his name is
Mm,
Lucky, and he's like all
okay.
over the place. So
They usually are, but I mean that's part of the charm, right?
yeah.
I had my dog pee down my car earlier today, so that's a bit unlucky. But that happens, right? And so you just gotta. It was my fault. It's been raining for 2 days here,
Mm.
and I think he just needed to go badly.
Yeah,
So
understood. So I'm curious, um, where did the idea came from, right? Was it like one day you had your pet and you're like, oh, we should do this for the pet? Because that is something that is super needed, especially for pet parents like myself. And we're thinking of, sometimes we don't know something about our dog and it's too late by the time we find out. So where did the idea came from for you? What has been some of the lessons you learned putting this business together?
I guess, on the one hand, I am an opportunistic entrepreneur. On the other hand, I was looking at the micro and macro, and I was like, look, there's a lot of things um, in the pet sector that
Mm-hmm.
is still awfully analog, very sort of old
Mm,
school, out of date. Like there needs to be some serious digital transformation. Not very different from what I did in publishing before,
yeah.
right? Like I took what was already there. People wanted to read this type of content, but in a different way, right? Um, and so I think with the pet sector, it was sort of, to me, I was trying to conduct certain chores myself, and I just couldn't
Mm,
find it anywhere online. I was like, why do I have to do everything in this sort of old analog way? Why do I have to go and pick up my kibble at the gas station? Like why,
mm,
of course you got pet e-commerce and it's been around for a long time, but I think there's a lot more to it. Of course these guys were starting to do really well, the auras, the whoops, and I think if you look at the micro and macro in the pet sector, you see that the largest group of pet owners today are Gen Z and millennials.
yeah.
And so this specific cohort of owners, they're very data driven. Everything they do on their smartphone. So it kind of makes sense that whatever they're going to do in and around their pet's life should also
Mm-hmm.
happen on that smartphone. And then because they're data driven, how do we collect data? Okay, we need to kind of create some kind of wearable that is similar to a Whoop or an Aura or something else, where we can extrapolate those data points.
Yeah.
And the way we do it is we have a bunch of sensors. We use BCG as the science, the
Okay.
underlying science, and then we pull out X, Y, and Z values and feed them into AI models. So,
Wow.
we're basically mimicking a heart rate. We're mimicking, some of these values. So we look at heart rate, pulse rate, respiration, temperature, behavior traits, step count, calories burned, like all these different things that can be very helpful, both for you, but also for the pet professional that ultimately will help you in the end of the day. So, I mean, my idea was, how do I understand my pet better? And, you know, is there other folks that have a need and a want and a desire to also understand their pet better? And,
Mm-hmm.
how can we kind of put it together? So that was where it started. Analog industry understood the audience because that was the same audience I spoke to and communicated with in the media industry with my previous brand. And so there is actually a lot of nuances to the similarity between
Mm,
what I did in my past and what I'm doing now. It's really digital transformation, different sector, different industry, kind of the same audience. This is a platform ecosystem play, something I kind of
yeah.
lacked before, and I didn't have the same type of rich data. And I really wanted to kind of get my hands on data, but not use it in an evil way. Use it in a
Yeah.
way where it helps the owner, but it also
Yeah.
helps the pet here in question. Yeah.
And I'm glad you said that, right? Because data is gold in our current era. So how do you make sure it's protected?
So you ensure that things are kind of off grid, that nobody can see it, like
Mm,
nobody within the company can kind of look at it. But obviously, our AI models and our AI can see it and make use of it, but it trains itself and it gets smarter and better. So you got to make sure that you store it in a way where you don't have a leak, right?
mm-hmm,
I think the second thing you want to do is you don't want to go and sell this to third party, which is something that we're
mm.
not doing. We're only using your data, your pet's data, to benefit yourself and first and foremost your pet in that equation. And you know, that's part of our ethos, that's part of our purpose, that's part of our mission and vision to truly help to extend the life of your pet and ensure that they live a happy and healthy life as they're here, and also to streamline your role as a pet parent. But you
Wow.
know, we're not going to sacrifice uh, selling data or
Yeah.
mining data or misusing data in any shape or form. Then
Th
that would take away from the bigger picture.
Thank you for sharing that. That is super important. Now, let's dive into the team because for you to get this thing up and running, you had to have several team, a team for the tech, a team, to help market this. How did you go about putting that team together? And you mentioned you had a board of advisor this time. How did you recruit that board of advisor?
So it's a good question. I guess we can start with the team. So I quickly realized that I can't do everything obviously myself, and I'm not the best at everything, and I just simply don't have the skill set. So uh, in that constellation, I had to seek out,
Mm-hmm.
you know, highly complementary team members, and I was fortunate enough to find some sort of, I guess you could call it co-founders that could come in
Mm.
like just behind me
Yeah.
a little bit later and help me out in certain areas, in particular in tech, because I'm a businessman first and foremost. Um, and I'm not necessarily a techie. I'm not
Uh-huh.
sitting and digging through the code and doing all that, but I mean, I'm more of a big picture guy, right?
Yeah.
So I needed to get tech. Then, you know, tech is just one of our components, and within
Yeah.
tech we have hardware, software,
Software.
firmware, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then we got AI, which is specialized in machine learning models. So, you know, just within tech you got like five different areas. Then we got science, where we're
Mm.
looking at data science, right? And we have
Yeah.
some brilliant minds up in India that helps us with that. Engineering we do out of Vietnam, so that's
Wow.
that's that's all the coding and apps and website. And then our chief veterinary officer, she's in New York, and uh, she is quite amazing,
That's
and
amazing.
both a doctor in veterinary medicine and a biologist, and so she comes in with a lot of things, and so she helps us. So we need to marry data science with medicine or veterinary
Mm-hmm.
medicine and sort of technology. And honestly, I was not good at any of those things. So I had to bring in quite a vast team. And and so that's on the team end. In terms of the advisory board, I also realized that this time around I wanted to do things differently. I'm a solo
Yeah.
entrepreneur here, though I kind of have co-founders. But in my previous venture, I had two co-founders that we started with
Mm-hmm.
from day one, and I felt like they were always a little bit against having advisors.
Mm.
And to, right. So my previous co-founders, they weren't like super keen on having
Mm-hmm.
advisors. They felt like they knew everything. One in particular. And so I said to myself, as a solo entrepreneur, I can't do all this on my own, and
Mm.
I don't have all the answers, and I need clarity and I need perspective. And so I have two advisory boards. I have one, but because of different time zones, some
Yeah.
are PST in the US and some are all the way back in Hong Kong, and therefore we tend to have two board meetings very close to each other with the two different groups. But that's
Wow.
advisory board. Anybody can build an advisory board. It's not a fiduciary board, so it's different. But it's good to have, and I think getting some people that are um, understand the topic
Mm-hmm.
and the theme that you're working across, but maybe also some that are just very smart people, but they don't work within that industry because they're coming with a
Yeah, different
different viewpoint.
perspective.
Yeah, yeah. I think a way to find them is to scour LinkedIn and look for people. People are usually quite open-minded. They're quite
Hmm.
flattered that you're asking them to come and advise you. And I think you can pay them with a little bit of shares if they're willing to conduct, a couple of meetings per year, structured meetings with
Yeah,
an agenda, with a pre-read, with a post-read, proper follow-up. Like if you have an advisory board, but it's done in a sloppy way, then you're not going to extract as much value out of it. So
yeah,
my suggestion is take your time, look for these individuals, use LinkedIn, use your network, ask people in your network if they know somebody who could help you with, something that pertains to what you need help with. And I think a diversified board, men,
yeah.
female, different cultural backgrounds also helps because there is um, different viewpoints within that.
I
Like,
love it.
old having an advisory board with old, white, gray-haired men is something we see a lot, and it gives a very singular viewpoint,
Perspective.
sometimes
Yeah,
very, yeah. So try to avoid that. Try to get a healthy mix of and even people from different countries and different backgrounds in that sense, not just US only,
yeah.
because you're gonna get a very American perspective.
I love that you're running an international business in several different countries with several different team members and several different board advisors. I think that is amazing. Now, to kind of wrap things up, right? What is that one small biz tips you would share with any entrepreneurs who's thinking, huh, I want to build an international business like that? What's like that, maybe that big lesson or big mistakes, or that one tip that you think can benefit them?
Sure. So look, if you want to go global or you want to start global, I would not have teams everywhere. You can have a
Mm,
distributed team. I think we learned this throughout the pandemic that having people working from home, not having expensive A-grade buildings as offices, it's not
yeah,
needed. You have to come together in a
yeah,
physical sense every now and then, but that can be done when you do an offsite and you plan it and it can be done. I think we're seeing a lot of news lately with Amazon and other big tech that are sort of forcing people back into the office.
yeah,
I understand it on one hand, uh, but I guess the issue with that is you need to have offices everywhere to kind of capture different markets. And I think a much more affordable way, like we have data science in India because the Indians are very, very good at that, right? So why would I try to source that, say, in Barcelona, where I know I cannot find the
mm,
skill set, and it's very hard to bring it here as well. So
yeah,
why do you force that? And I see this a lot with companies where they think it's super important to sit together every day, all the time, and it must be one central place, one central location. So, look, the cheap, affordable, and I think efficient way, and this of course depends on what you're doing. You can have a distributed team across the globe, um, and I think that works. You also don't necessarily need to have everybody full time. Go to Upwork. You can find
mm,
different skill sets for whatever that little task is that you may
yeah,
need for that specific
yeah,
time. And that's another very affordable way of actually dipping into different cultures, different perspectives, different skill set in different countries at a fraction of what you would pay locally. And there's tons of similar services as that. So I think, that's important. Um, the other thing you could think of if you're global is you can be in a very tax efficient jurisdiction, right?
mm,
So, it's not illegal as an American or as a European to have a business in
yeah,
Andorra or have a business in Liechtenstein or in Luxembourg, or in Singapore for that matter, where you have a very easy way of running a company.
yeah,
You can hire people in the morning, you can fire them in the afternoon, you know, you can set up a company in a couple of days and you are paying very little tax. And maybe that should be your parent business. And you can kind of move royalty
I
fees
love
and
it.
other things up there. So that's another way that you could think of it. It's not illegal. It's, it's fully kosher, fully legal. Uh, but that's another thing that I would kind of look at, like what's the tax jurisdiction and does it make sense? Is it startup friendly?
Yeah,
Is it business friendly? Yeah.
I love it. So how do people get in touch with you if they want to, buy the product that you're selling or they want to connect with you and your team? What's the best way for them to reach you guys?
So they can reach out to me, LinkedIn. I'm not overly social, but I am on LinkedIn, so you can find me there. It's Richard Nilsson, and you put Richard Nilsson My Pet Go or something.
Yeah.
You'll find me. Uh, you can add a request, and you can ask me anything that you want to ask me. If you need some business advice, I'm happy to always share my 2 cents. Don't be a stranger. In terms of the wearable, you can find it at www.mypetgo.com.
Hmm.
And again, we're not overly social. There is social accounts, but yeah, we're gonna kind of ramp that up a bit as well. So yeah,
Guys, reach out to Richard. As you can see, he is full of knowledge, especially in the international market. Thank you for jumping on. I appreciate you.
thank you for having me. Appreciate it.